I always told myself, I'm not bending for Hollywood. I'm not going to change myself for Hollywood.
When did you feel this internal biblical Noah in you?
I haven't met anybody else who has wanted to put their entire career at risk.
I grew up thinking Hollywood just cares about money. Now I'm actually questioning that. Why are they making garbage that Americans don't want?
That's not my cup of tea.
Whose cup of tea is it?
This has been Hollywood for far too long.
Do the movies choose you, or do you choose your movies?
These roles find me. In every one of these roles, God is also trying to teach me something.
Zach, I absolutely cannot wait to get into this conversation. I know it's going to be very serious and cerebral, but I needed to bring you in because you're an expert in Hollywood, at least more than me. And I want to show you something just absolutely mind-boggling. And maybe you can explain to me what the bleep is going on. Take a look at this thing.
I want to know it all. What is the protocol? The techniques and the risks. How many operations? How much time do you need?
Mammoplasty.
Yes.
Vaginoplasty.
Yes.
Rhinoplasty.
Yes.
Laryngoplasty.
Yes.
Mammoplasty.
Yes.
Vaginoplasty.
Yes.
Rhinoplasty.
Yes.
Laryngoplasty.
Yes.
Control laryngoplasty.
What is that?
Adam's apple reduction.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, so this is Amelia Perez, and apparently it is nominated for 13 Oscars. It already received, I believe, 4 Golden Globes and 2 Cannes Awards. And this is not a joke. It's not like a mockery.
Yeah.
They actually,
No, it's very earnest.
They're actually taking this stuff seriously. So, I've been saying for a long time that Hollywood is just on its deathbed, but did this just put the kibosh on it?
Listen. So I love Zoe Saldana. I think she's a wonderful actress, and I don't know her personally, but I have a lot of mutual friends, and from everything that I know, she's a wonderful human being. And so I want to make it clear that, and not just Zoe. I mean, there's plenty of wonderful people that are involved.
There are
Yeah.
serious actors in this, right?
That's not my cup of tea.
Whose cup of tea is it?
I don't know, but here's the thing. Art, entertainment, right? It is not a meritocracy. As much as I wish that sometimes it was, like in a truer sense, because I do think that if you looked at, for example, I don't know, the AFI 100 top films, like what makes the AFI top 100 films? Clearly, there is a lot of shared DNA in certain cinematography, direction, acting, writing, wardrobe, all of these types of things that we can look at and say, well, that's an excellent version of that. And then other films that don't possess those things, so therefore they don't have that level of excellence. So there is somewhat of not a meritocracy, but some ways of gauging what is good and what is not. But at the end of the day, it's still subjective. Art is subjective. I've seen this clip, as I was telling you, I've seen this clip before. And because it was going around on X, and it does, ironically, even though I know that they are very serious about this, it comes across like a farce. It comes across like satire.
It seems like they're mocking themselves.
It does. Yeah, it's very strange because you're singing a song about something that's, by the way, quite serious. I mean, even for people that really believe in these surgeries, this is a very serious thing for them. It's a very serious thing when it comes to how it affects people's biology to go in and perform a surgery like a phalloplasty or whatever, when women, biologically born women, believe that they are a man inside and they want to then represent that physically. In order to go give themselves a penis, the amount of skin that they have to graft off of their arms in order to then form a phallus, to then graft that on to their crotch, and the amount of things that are involved. But by the way, sometimes it's not their arm. They use part of their colon in order to do that. There have been deaths involved. So it's serious. These surgeries are very serious. It feels so like this lighthearted, like we're going to do a vaginoplasty kind of thing. Also, as a singer and someone who's done musicals, I'm a lot disappointed in the music of it. Like, if you're going to do that, like, I don't know, like maybe be singing on key,
That would be reasonable to expect.
Put a little more, a little more effort into that. I don't know. I don't really know what to say about it all. Not that I'm trying to be diplomatic. It's all very confusing because even for people that really believe in that, it doesn't seem like it's representing it in the best light, personally.
Well, I'd imagine if you went ahead and made a movie like that, or the Daily Wire made a movie like that, or Angel Studios made a movie like that, they would be so upset because they would say that they're being mocked.
Well, that's because
it is mockery.
Well, yes, but that's because if Daily Wire made a movie like that, it would be a
mockery.
Spoof. It would. It'd be like,
But it would probably look just like that clip.
Probably.
Yes.
It would probably have something very similar to that. Yeah.
You do make a good point, and that is the people who go through these surgeries go through a horrendous amount of pain, both mentally and physically.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that Hollywood is treating it simply like extracting a tooth or even lighter, frankly, I think it's really sad. And I think it's really a testament to what's happening with these award ceremonies. They mean nothing now. They've robbed any sort of awards of any sort of meaning. If you're getting 13 awards at the Oscars for something so bad that is, I mean, the music is not great. The theme is bizarre. I'm like,
have you seen the whole film?
No, I watched portions of it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it. I don't know. Listen, I mean, I do think it begs the question, were the subject, if it was, let's say the quality of the film was all the same, but the subject matter wasn't as controversial, would it still be nominated for as many awards? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't seen the film. So I don't like commenting on things that I haven't, gotten to really, take in their entirety. But I do think that there is absolutely something, and it has been for quite some time, this desire to want to reward stories that are, that are pushing. Maybe pushing is not the right word, but
so brave.
Sure. I mean, certain narratives that are really progressive, and because Hollywood, is predominantly a much more progressive and liberal town, it's like, yes, we want to honor that. Whereas, like American Sniper, right? That was as far as the parlance of Hollywood, they could all recognize it was a really well-made movie and that everybody did a great job making the movie. But a lot of the gatekeepers in Hollywood were like, well, this is, pro-war and, this is Clint Eastwood and this is, whatever it is. And so it failed to hit certain benchmarks because of that. And I will say that there are also, films that would have a more even faith-based, let's say, audience or demo that they're approaching, that those could be very excellently made films, but they're never going to be lauded in Hollywood because that's not messaging that Hollywood can really celebrate. And I think that that's unfortunate. Again, it's difficult because it's not a meritocracy, but I think that we should be able to look at the film as a film, almost regardless of the messaging, and say, who's done a fantastic job of making a film?
Right. Is this a great movie?
Yes. And obviously you cannot extract the message from that entirely because the message is a major part of what the storytelling is and the excellence or lack thereof of whatever that film is. I have been very vocal about how I think that the trans ideology and trans movement is one that has become a very slippery slope. If you're an adult, I've said this many times, if you're an adult, as a libertarian, which I am, I believe that everybody should be able to go live the life that they want to live, so long as you are not infringing upon the rights and liberties of other people, right? That is like purest libertarianism. So if you believe that you were born in the wrong body and you want to go change that body as an adult, you should have every right to go and do that. That should never be a consideration for a child. We have all understood for a long enough time that until you're 18 years old, and by the way, even at 18, your brain still hasn't fully stopped, right, forming and shaping and growing. That's around 24.
Right.
But we all agreed, okay, around 18, it's formed enough for you to have a good enough idea of who you are.
But not even alcohol.
But not even alcohol. Not cigarettes. Not voting. not serving in the military. Tattoos, which, by the way, used to be a very permanent thing. Now you can get tattoo removal. You still can't go get a tattoo unless you're 18 years old. But they will allow children who are very much, kind of in creative headspace that, one day they think they're a dragon. The next day they think they're a pirate. The next day they think...
Or sometimes mental distress.
All manner of different things. We cannot just go on the word of children who say, I am this. Like, I'm sorry. I don't believe that. And by the way, let's say they may even actually at the end of the day be right. It's still doing them a disservice to put them on puberty blockers, to do anything, but certainly procedures that are changing these kids' biology. And I think what's really sad is that there are a lot of detransitioners that have been trying to come out and bravely coming out because, man, talk about being in no man's land. You went from being this hero in the LGBT, but specifically the T community, because you were so brave that you recognized that you were non-binary or you were a man or a woman trapped in the wrong body or whatever you were. And everyone was encouraging you to go transition and, oh, yes. And you do it. And then all of a sudden you're on the other side of that and your brain starts to catch up and you're like, oh my God, wait a minute. No, I'm not this. I've made a horrible mistake. You would think all of your best friends in the trans community that encourage you to do this, knowing your heart, they've been your friends, right?
Yeah.
You would think they would be like, oh man, wow, that's a tough place to be. Listen, if you've now changed your mind, we still love you.
Yeah.
We still support you. But they don't. They turn their back on them entirely.
Excommunicated.
I follow quite a few. I follow quite a few of a lot of everybody on X and on Instagram because I try to keep myself out of echo chambers as best I can. Social media, as we all know, is just a really toxic environment in many respects, but specifically if you get stuck in echo chambers, because you're just going to keep getting this force feedback on whatever it is that you think you believe. And I want to be challenged in all that. I want to be learning all the time. So I follow quite a few members of the gay and lesbian community, trans community, detransitioners, and I have so much respect for them because they are willing to put all of that out there and say, I was wrong. And with anything, like very few people are willing, whether you're detransitioning or not. How many people actually have the humility to say, you know what, I was wrong. I believed this thing to be true. I followed through on that and I was bamboozled. And that's actually not what's going on. So I think it's a really unfortunate thing that the trans community turns their back on those who became a part of it, but have then recognized that they're not a part of it. And then for the hatred and it's heartbreaking. But anyway, so I don't know. I mean, it's a very complicated issue, obviously, but at the end of the day, I think we all have to ask ourselves, well, what do we believe philosophically, right? And build from there. And philosophically, like I said, I don't believe that children have the capacity to fully understand who they are, at least well enough to make permanent changes to their biology, first and foremost. But actually, even underpinning that, I do not believe that we're ever born in the wrong body. I don't. Which is not to say that I don't think that we are born into bodies that might be broken in some way or not working properly. Obviously, there are so many children that are born into this world that are children born with Down syndrome, children that are born without limbs, children that are born with all manner of different malady, right? We don't love them any less because they were born in that way, but we can't look at any of that and say, well, that's normal. It's like, no, it's not normal. We have a template of what is normal. And if we start to just do away with that so that we can make people feel more comfortable, instead of saying, no, we can love them exactly where they're at and also want better for them and also want better for everyone else and get to the bottom of why some of these things are befalling us and our children, right? Which is going back to my love for Bobby Kennedy. I think that having people like him get to the bottom of what is in our food, what is in our water, what is in our air, what is in our drugs, that why are we so metabolically unhealthy as a nation? It is a crime that the United States, of all the countries in the world, that our metabolic health is far lower than other Western nations, even non-Western nations that are just simply not getting a 10,000 artificial ingredients in their food constantly, or being pumped full of, I think personally, a vaccine schedule that has not had enough oversight, that people are not giving enough credence to being like, hey, listen, maybe these things are safe and effective. Can we get the data? Can we look at that?
I mean, the amazing thing is we were not allowed to ask these questions, and most people didn't even want to ask these questions, which is why I think it feels like things are different now. It feels like people like you can actually speak and ask questions, where in the past you were just completely excommunicated. It does feel like things in 2025 are changing a little bit. And it does take me back to, my question about Hollywood. Do they care more about ideology or money? I grew up thinking Hollywood just cares about money. They just want to make money, and they're going to make whatever it is that pays the most. Now I'm actually questioning that. Do they really care about what sells the most? Because you talk about American Sniper. That movie
did very well.
Yeah.
And family films do the best.
They do very well.
Yeah.
So why aren't they making more of those? Why are they making garbage? Why are they making garbage that Americans don't want if they're really about money?
Well, again, garbage to you, maybe not garbage to other people.
The movies the garbage movies, the movies that I'm calling garbage, don't seem to do very well. So if we're just looking at pure economics, are these movies doing very well? I mean, more and more so, it's proving that Americans don't want this stuff for their kids.
I think that there's already so much money that's been made in Hollywood, like lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money. Obviously, they want to continue to make money. I don't think that that's somehow changed in the business model. But I think there's a lot of other factors that are included in all of this, right? Like, if you don't have really strong leadership, and I'm not going to point to or call out any specific leaders of any specific studios, but a lot of these studios and their executives, they think they're responding to what is politically correct right now. Nobody wants to run afoul of that, because if you do, you can have the government up your butt about it, and they think the majority of the populace going to start boycotting your product because you're not being inclusive in a certain way, or you're not representing certain stories, or, I know that woke as a word, started as a specific definition regarding specifically Black Americans and the difficulty in, trying to succeed in this country. I've had this argument on X because I was trying to explain what woke has become, not what it might have started as, but what woke has become. And what woke has become is lots and lots and lots of different things, inclusive of DEI, but also like towing certain political ideology, political lines, and putting those into all of our business practices, because we don't want to, everyone's afraid of being the bad guy. Everyone's afraid of, I don't want to be accused of being a racist. And those things, those are effective. If you have people calling you a racist because you chose to hire someone who was white as opposed to a minority for this particular role, particularly, let's say, if the character was, in its source material, it was a Black character in the book, and then, was cast as a white actor, which, by the way, never happens. It happens all the time the other way around. I mean, I won't say never. Obviously, back in the day in Hollywood, it happened all the time.
Yeah.
And that wasn't okay. It was not a good look that we had a bunch of white actors playing Asian characters and Native American characters and all of that stuff. Although, also, how many of those particular people groups had actors that could fit into those slots? I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not about to get into an argument about it.
Right, but they're saying the way to fix this is to do another form of racism.
Well, exactly. It's to go the opposite way.
Yeah.
Is to take who were traditionally white characters in comic books or books or other source materials and say, well, it's our turn now. Yeah. And we should be able to do that. But it is a very strange thing, particularly when it comes to even, like, for example, gay characters in film, for example. I've never played a gay character in a film, but nobody's ever offered me that. And I don't know, if the right role came along and I found it was a really beautiful story and something that was worth putting my time and talent into, it's something I might consider. But I wouldn't be able to consider it anymore because based on what we're seeing now in Hollywood, it's no, you can't be a gay character unless you're actually a gay actor. But if you're a gay actor, you can play a straight character, and that's totally fine. And because straight people have had it good for long enough, and now it's their turn, seemingly. By the way, I say all these things. There are plenty of gay friends of mine who see the absurdity in this.
Oh, yes.
There are plenty of my friends who are minorities that see the absurdity in this.
Most people see the absurdity of it
most
unless
people
they
do.
live in the bubble.
Right. But from a studio perspective, when you're talking about, are they not wanting to make money? They do want to make money. But they're also in this place of, I think it's a lot of fear. I don't know that they feel like they have to or they really want to make some of these choices, but they feel like they have to because, well, this is the sign of the times. Like everyone has to participate in Pride Month as big as you can. But even the gay community will call them out and be like, so you're with us for 1 month out of the year, rainbows everywhere. But then the rest of the year, there's no rainbows. Is this how it works, right? Everyone's just getting their political currency.
Because it just never ends.
I know. Well, yeah.
It just never ends.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wish that there was better leadership that could look at all of that stuff and say, and by the way, and not flippantly or not, just push it away, but say, hey, we hear you. We see you. We want to be as inclusive as possible. We see that there absolutely are roles that we could fill with people of color, people from the gay community, whatever it is. And wherever that best fit is, we're absolutely going to find it. But that's not going to be a mandate for our company. That's just simply not going to be a mandate. And if you and your family and your friends don't want to support us anymore, that's unfortunate, but we totally understand. We hope that we see you down the road. That's how any company should act. Like, act with grace, act with responsibility, act with integrity. Recognize, though, that you are not beholden to whatever these constantly shifting sands of morality. Like, guys, like, morality shouldn't be that easily shifted, right? We should know what is right and what is wrong. I think that there is universal truth that we can find, and we have found for a really long time. Going back to our conversation about the Bible earlier, I think the Bible is still full of lots of universal truth. It's not, there's a lot of stuff in the Old Testament that people would argue, like, really? Like that there's a lot of punitive God in there. There's a lot of like death to the infidel type of stuff in the Old Testament. And then people in the New Testament, people would say, yeah, but that's the Old Testament and ours is the New Testament, and this is our new covenant with God, and so on and so forth. But still, throughout both Old and New Testament, there's some universal truth in all of that that we can still glean from. And I think that even encoded in all of us, imprinted on all of our hearts, whether you're somebody who reads the Bible or not, you know what it means to treat somebody with decency and with respect. And you also know what it means to treat somebody without those things. And I think that as a collective, as humans, that's what we need to get back to. It doesn't mean we have to accommodate everyone and every whim and every well, I'm feeling this. Well, that's great. I'm glad that you're feeling that. You're responsible for your feelings. Honestly, one of the things we should be doing more of is look to just everyday, regular psychology and therapy. It tells you plenty. If you go to a therapist, they'll tell you you're responsible for your feelings. Nobody else is responsible for your feelings. So if that's true, for every individual going to therapy, why is it that somehow we just throw all that out the window when it comes to how we do business and how we guide our industries? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, when it comes to Hollywood, I think that they have concluded that they're above God and they get to dictate new morality. I mean, that's the classic human hubris where, well, we don't need the Bible to tell us what's moral. The Bible is ancient. We will tell you what is moral. It is moral to listen to a child and basically do what the child wants. That's what's moral. It is moral to apply equity so that we can pick and choose who should be in what, right? They want to go above the Bible because the Bible is old.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
So you're doing something about it, though. So you bought 75 acres in Austin,
Texas. Yeah.
What are you doing there? Is that a new cult?
Isn't that where all of them go? Was in Texas? So ever since I was a little kid, I knew things. As soon as my awareness came online, which I think is about 3 or 4 for all of us, prior to that, you're alive, but you're not really aware of your surroundings. You're not really aware of what's going on. And around 3 or 4, your brain starts to evolve enough where like, oh, like the lights turn on, the movie starts, you start having memories, and you start to kind of tune into your DNA, like what you were born to do, I think. And for me, it was very clear. One, I knew that there was a God who loved me. I remember being at like a Sunday school and this adult was trying to explain the concept of God. And I was like, no, I got it. Thanks though. And then I knew that I was going to be an actor. Like I didn't know what an actor was. I didn't know these things cerebrally, but I knew them in my knowing, right? Like in my soul, whatever. And it was more than just I wanted to be an actor. Like I knew that there was a calling on my life. And I couldn't explain to you how or why, other than like, other than like maybe, just maybe, before our soul comes down and inhabits our body, maybe we get this like mission select screen, like almost like a video game. Like you're looking at these different options, like, oh, I could go down and
maybe
I could
007 called on you.
Well, kind of, like I could go down and I could live this life and that's going to come with these challenges and these rewards, or I can go down and live this life and it's going to come with these challenges and these rewards. I don't know. But I knew that I was going to be an actor. Like that was a part of my calling. I didn't know what an actor was. These words weren't even like resonating in my head. I just knew this thing. And I also knew that I was supposed to create community and foster community on a very, very large level. And part of that was, I remember seeing a cul-de-sac for the first time. And I don't know if you can tune into this, but I think I've talked to other people and a lot of other people have had a moment like this. My little 3-4-year-old brain seeing a cul-de-sac for the first time, like thousands of years of evolution came alive in me. Because if you look at a cul-de-sac, it's a village.
Yeah.
That's what we all were for thousands of years. We were these hunter-gatherer versions of ourselves. We didn't have all of these trappings. We didn't need all of these trappings. We needed each other. We needed 5 things. We needed food, water, shelter, clothing, and community. And community was the most important. Because without community, it made it hard to get all those other 4 things. And with community, you could have a broken leg and people are like, hey, we got you. We'll go on the hunt. You rest up, So that's all we needed for a really, really long time.
And meaning.
Well, yes, but I would argue that the meaning is something that comes through the process of all of that, right? Because I think God can be found in all of that. Mm-hmm. God was found in the hunt. God was found in the gather. God was found in the birthing. God was found in the community. Like God's a part of all of that stuff. And the meaning behind all of that, the survival with all of that. I do think about, whenever 10 to 12,000 years ago, when we had this, or the Sumerians or whomever had this great idea of monetary, countenance. Like, hey, instead of us constantly carrying around our wares, you've got a bunch of pots and I've got a bunch of goats. Like, I don't want to have to bring 5 goats over to get 10 of your pots and vice versa. So we'll use these shells that count value. And then, the ego, flesh and the spirit, the flesh is the ego, which is also a gift that God gave us for survival. But it got hijacked. I really believe in that moment. Once the ego saw that it didn't need 5 things, it only needed 1 thing. If I just have a bunch of these shells, I can buy all the food, clothing, shelter, and water and community. Although that was the great lie, because money actually can't buy you community. It can buy you a home in a neighborhood. It can buy you workers, and it can buy you influence, but it will never actually buy you community, right? And for 10,000 years, we've all been going after more shells. And in doing that, we've lost each other. We've lost actual community. We don't have it anymore, which is why we don't know our neighbors anymore. So we don't trust our neighbors anymore. So our kids don't run around until the lights go down. We're all feeling like, oh, I got to, where are they? I don't know. I don't want somebody else tracking them, right? We don't know where our food comes from anymore, which is why it can be all poisoned, right? Like there's so many issues that are going on in the world. And so anyway, so you're building. I'm digressing. So anyway, I knew a lot of these weird things when I was a kid, but then fast forward to I'm 19 years old and I'm starting to work in Hollywood and my dreams are coming true. These dreams of like, of prophecy of like, oh my God, I knew I was going to be an actor. And I'm like, and now I'm doing it.
Yeah. Not just an actor. You are a famous actor.
Well, yeah, reasonably at this point in my life. But at 19, I was just starting. And, but at 19, I got my first look behind the curtain and I saw how all the sausage was made. And I was so bummed out because this is a really, really, really broken industry, as you know. And it's been broken, by the way, since the beginning. I mean, this is why Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks and all those OGs were trying to build their own studio. And they did, United Artists Studio, because they were trying to get away from the corruption that the Louis B. Mayers and everybody else who were running the big studios at the time were putting them through. It didn't ultimately go the distance. There's still a shingle of a production company called United Artists today. It's still operational, but the studio itself went under. So I'm looking at all of this just brokenness, this industry that, you know, to put it simply, you've got like almost like an organism. If the muscle of the organism is the talent and the money required to make anything is the epidermis, is the skin, right? Well, you need a little bit of fat between the muscle and the skin in order for everything to work healthily and smoothly. Like, you know, but we're obese. We're obese with middle management fat, with all these people who are not creative, who are not visionary, and for years and years and years get to sit around in their ego and just push everybody around being like, yeah, go make the movie like this. Yeah, go, well, my note is put him in a red shirt. Yeah, a red shirt, that's going to be it. And we're like, why? What's the point of the road? Because I like red. Because my kid said he likes the red shirt. It's like, what are we even talking about? And these same executives who push everybody around and who, by the way, oftentimes are giving notes that are not just erroneous. Sometimes they're very toxic and bad and derail projects. If a project fails, they take no responsibility for the failure. But if the project succeeds, they're a genius. Look what I did. Oh my gosh, right? This has been Hollywood for far too long. And so I'm looking at this. I'm like, God, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be a part of a system that is taking advantage of the artists and their art just to commoditize all of that into entertainment. When we all know, everyone in Hollywood knows this. I've talked to everybody about this for 25 years. And whether they're liberal or or conservative or whatever, everyone's like, yeah, it's broken, but nobody does anything about it. And I was like, I can't do this. I don't want to be, as much as you hate a system, if you still decide to engage in it, you're complicit in it. And I didn't want to be complicit in the broken system. And I really felt like God in that moment said, Zach, you're not wrong. It's very broken, but God, am going to make a better version of that, and I'm going to use you to do that. In order to do that, you got to ride on this broken boat, this Titanic that you know one day will sink. And you got to ride it long enough to build your relationships and resources and reputation. And all the while, I'm going to download you with the blueprints of a better boat. And you're going to start building that boat while you're riding on this boat. And then at the right moment, you're going to jump ship and you're going to bring as many other people with you as you can, 2 by 2, if necessary. And that is the impetus behind Wildwood and Wildwood Studios, which is what I moved out to Austin 7.5 years ago. After, by the way, many years prior to that of building this up and knowing eventually, unfortunately, I couldn't do it in California because I'm from California. I love California, but California is so broken. We'll see what happens with this new administration and how that federally trickles out to the states. Maybe it starts to pull things around. Maybe, as horrible as these recent fires have been, maybe that starts waking more people up to, hey, we need better leadership in this state. I don't know. I hope. I don't know. But I'm not holding my breath, but maybe. I know that there's a lot of people that are very, very, very upset. I know that, by the way, more and more people are exodusing the state. People that held on through the pandemic and were like, that's it. These fires are absolutely the last straw. We can't do it anymore. My phone was ringing up. People were like, are you still in Austin? We're thinking about moving to Austin. Is this still cool? I'm like, yeah, it's groovy. Come on out, you know? So anyway, I knew, very early on, it couldn't be in California.
So when did you feel this internal biblical Noah in you? Like, at what point was it?
At 4. Like, when I tell you, I knew when I looked at the cul-de-sac.
You went into Hollywood and you were part of that whole machine, knowing that you were feeling a calling to actually extract.
The entire time I've worked in this industry, I have wanted it to be better. And I have been working on ways to make it better. And that, first and foremost, that starts with me just being on any set that I'm on and fighting for my cast and my crew, which has not been easy and has put me in some not great situations because there's a lot of producers or executives that don't like that. They want me to just be a part of that elite at the top. That's like good. It's good for us. I mean, why hasn't Hollywood changed? If everybody knows that it's all broken, why hasn't it changed? It's because most of the people that have the ability to make it a better place, it's not broken for them. It's broken for everybody else. And I don't screw around with that. I care way too much about my crew. I will fight for them. I will die for them. And in a lot of ways I have. It's been detrimental for me in certain situations where I have fought for the quality of the product that we're making for our audience because I believe that we owe it to the audience. And I've fought for my cast and my crew because we were not being treated the way that we should have been being treated. Whether it's hours that are absurd or meals that aren't any good or working conditions or whatever it is. It's like, guys, hey, I know that at the top of the food chain, paying for this TV show or this movie, you've got billions of dollars. You can't just peel a few more off so we can have some decent food and not have to work. Like, why don't we just extend the schedule one more week instead of truncating it all together and making everybody work 14, 16 hours? I mean, when I was shooting Chuck, the TV show on NBC years ago, the first season, thank God we only did 13 episodes. We were averaging 16-hour days. Sometimes we were shooting 18-hour days. Your mental health and physical health is just spiraling down and down and down. And I don't blame my producers and my writers or even, the executives at NBC or Warner Brothers necessarily. It's the system. The system is like, well, this is what we do. We just work everybody to the bone. I mean, first ADs, a first assistant director in Hollywood, their life expectancy is insanely short. They die of heart attacks like all the time because they're under so much stress and duress. UPMs, first ADs, they're just trying to hold it all together. Why? We're making movies and television shows. Can we not bring it down a notch?
How many people do you think are like you that have this burning biblical Noah in them, that when they know that there is a place that they could go to, let's say in Austin, to create a new industry of filmmaking that is clean and treats people with humanity, do you think they would join in knowing that it's ready for them? Is that your vision? Is that there are enough people out there with talent and passion that would say, you know what, I'm on?
So I'll answer this in three parts. So first, to finish, because forgive me, verbose and tangential, so I could go off the reservation. So just to finish out ultimately what the vision is, right? So I knew we needed a better Hollywood. But to me, a better Hollywood isn't just creating a new independent movie studio. That's the beginning of it, or kind of the crux of the, let's say, work part of it. But if we're going to go make a better work environment, let's go make a better life for everybody. Let's go create community like it used to be. By the way, if you went to Warner Brothers Studios back in the 30s, there was no wall around Warner Brothers. You would drive, but it was all desert too, by the way, right? You're driving through a bunch of undeveloped desert, and then all of a sudden you come up on this neighborhood of all these cool little bungalows, and you work your way through all of that, and then, there's all these sound stages and all these offices. And people who worked at Warner Brothers tended to live in a lot of these bungalows and whatnot, and they would just go walk to work. It was its own little blue zone, and everybody knew each other, and everybody hopefully trusted each other, and they all got to work together all the time. To me, we need to get back to that. I mean, Hershey's, for example. Why does Hershey, Pennsylvania exist? It's because Hershey was making chocolate, right? But he didn't stop at just making a factory. He made a town for everybody who worked at his factory. And that town had clinics in it and schools in it and all of the things that his people would need because they deserved it. If we have the ability as heads of industry to go and do these big things, go take care of your people. The happiest bees make the tastiest honey. I am a firm believer in that. So my intention is not to just go build a movie studio. It's to go build a living community within a movie studio. And that feels like a 5-star resort where everyone's needs are so satiated that they don't even think about their wants anymore. That's what I think we need to get back to. So that includes a regeneratively grown organic food that's farm to table, clean water, clean air, taking the commute away, giving people the ability to walk to work. Not only that, I get to walk my kid to school on the way to work. And on my lunch break, they get to meet me. We can coordinate their lunch break and our work lunch break. So I get to see my kid on my lunch break if I want to. We can throw the ball around. And then, all right, Timmy, looks like you're going to go back to school and dad's going to go back to work. And then I get to get off at a decent time. And I get to meet my family to go have a decent meal and get to bed at a decent hour. Have all of the entertainment and recreation, have the health and wellness. giving people the ability to actually heal and not just give them a bunch of band-aids to cover the symptoms of the problems that are being created with the poisoned food that we're constantly being given. So it's an intentional city is what I'm building.
How do
It's a
you pay
kibbutz on steroids.
Yeah, I was thinking this is like a kibbutz.
Yeah.
But how do you pay for that? Is
Finding
it like
altruistic
a kibbutz where
investors.
everybody...
It's finding altruistic investors that recognize that we need to make changes in every industry around the world, and recognizing that this is good for them. Like if we can go and give people a better life who are making content, we make better content. And that's for you and your family and everybody else. More than that, this becomes a shining example of how to live life better for anyone in every industry for that matter. And we're about to start doing the first phase. We're the pro forma and the investment deck is like right on the 1 yard line. And we had a wonderful like kickoff event at my ranch with a bunch of investors and family offices and stuff. And I've just vision cast to everybody. I'm like, this is what we're doing. And this is why. I mean, really, that's what I said. I was like, if you're wondering, why? Well, I'll tell you why. Like who doesn't, regardless of the industry, who doesn't want to live in a neighborhood where you know and trust your neighbors? So much so that your kids can run around freely and you don't need to track them all the time. Who doesn't want to live in a neighborhood where the food and the water and the air are clean? Who doesn't want to live in a neighborhood where the health and wellness is provided and it's real and it's good? And it's not just your physical well-being, it's your mental and emotional and spiritual well-being. Who doesn't want to live in a place where entertainment is coming to you, where we have amphitheaters, where we have live performances and speakers and health gurus coming and doing classes and retreats? I mean, it can be done. And I believe that if you build it, they will come. So back to your question of how many other Noahs are there? I don't know how many other Noahs there are. In fact, I haven't met anybody else who has wanted to put their entire career at risk. Or I haven't been putting my career at risk per se in building that. I've possibly put my career in some level of jeopardy. I don't even know, coming out and being more political. But even that, I don't really think about and I don't really care about, because I think that when God calls you to something, you do it. And you got to trust that God knows that what's going to come is going to come and you'll be protected and you'll be provided for. So I don't really feel a lot of, anxiety about that per se. But I will say there may not be a lot of people who have felt the call on their life to go spearhead this. Hundreds of thousands of people, if not everyone, wants this. In fact, I don't know anyone who, yes, there are certain people that really love being elite and they don't want to be, they don't want to mix with the plebeians, right? They want to have their big mansion in the hills and feel exclusive. That's a very small percentage of the population. You know what most people want? They want community again. They do. We all do. It's because it's in us. It's literally evolutionarily in us. We are not supposed to be by ourselves, navigating the waters of life by ourselves. We're not. God did not create us that way. And yet, because we've all believed this Western lie, which is if you have the right job and you make the right amount of money and you have the right spouse and they have the right job and they make the right amount of money and you have the right house in the right neighborhood and you have the right amount of cars and you go on the right amount of vacations and you have the right amount of kids and they go to the right schools and you have the right then finally you'll be happy. It's a lie. It's a lie we've all been fed. And so all of us on some level, we go, well, I want to start a home. I want to go buy that home in this tract neighborhood where I have my own yard and my own pool. And then I'll feel good for about T-2 days until the dopamine wears off, like any other purchase. And then you're kind of like, all right, I got my thing. And you had a housewarming party and everybody comes over and they all pat you on the back and like, hey, all right, Bob, well done, And then how often do you even get back in that yard? How often do you get into that pool? And as far as I'm concerned, like, well, why don't we get back to a more minimalistic type of life where we all have a massive yard together and we have a massive pool that's a friggin' water park that we all get to experience together. Mm-hmm. Like there's ways to incorporate, not socialism, but like social aspects of what it means to live together in harmony, the way that I believe we were meant to do, and still maintaining a healthy, not captured, not crony capitalism, but like a conscientious capitalism that still encourages people and rewards people for their hard work and ingenuity. Like there's no reason why we can't bring all these together and create a better, healthier ism. But I just think that people don't want to put the work in because it's hard. It requires a lot of mental and emotional effort to like work that out.
But and in the meantime, you have this, big vision of
Mhm.
of really building a mini world.
Mhm.
You're still working in Hollywood, right? Didn't you just come out with a movie, or you're about to come out
About
with a
to.
movie?
The Unbreakable Boy, yeah.
And The Unbreakable Boy,
February 21st, The Unbreakable Boy. Go
which,
see it.
by the way, I'm totally gonna watch because I watched
It's
a
wonderful.
clip of it.
It is
It's based on a book, right?
It's based on a book, which is a true story about this family, the Lorette family. It's very grounded. It's very slice of life. It's Scott. The very brief of it is Scott and Teresa Lorette. They met, in their 20s. By their third date, they got pregnant. Oopsie, pregnancy. Not expecting it, but we're like, you know what? We should commit to this. We're going to see this through. We'll figure out our relationship as we go, but we're going to go have this baby. We're going to do this. And so they do. And their firstborn son, they had two sons, Austin and Logan, but Austin is born and immediately there's some complications and strangeness. He's crying all the time, like crying far more than other kids do. And eventually they had him tested. He had osteogenesis imperfecta, which is brittle bones disease, which he got through his mother. She knew that she had a possibility that she could pass it on. But they were able to kind of like wrap their head around that, like, okay, we can mitigate this. We can safeguard against this. We'll pad things, whatever it is. Then they had their second son, Logan, born normal, no osteogenesis imperfecta or anything like that. And then a few more years go by and their oldest son, Austin, starts presenting in kind of different abnormal ways. And they had him tested and he came back that he was on the autistic spectrum, which is another big curveball. And by the way, and at a time when autism, Austin is now 31 years old. So autism's obviously been around for this amount of time, but only now in the last 10 years has it become this really like prevalent, prominent, big thing that we're all talking about. Back then, it was still kind of like, what is this? Like, what is our son dealing with? So the movie is Scott and Teresa, played by Megan Fahey, the two of us playing these characters that are on their own journey, trying to figure out who they are, trying to love themselves and love each other at the same time, while navigating the waters of having these two sons, the oldest of which on the autistic spectrum. And listen, autism is something that affects everybody at this point, unfortunately. But still, these beautiful souls, these children that are autistic, and the beauty that they do still bring into the world. And that is so much of the beauty of the film, because Scott is someone who doesn't love himself, doesn't realize he doesn't love himself, is self-medicating with booze and all kinds of stuff, did not expect to have a life that was outside of this control. He's, as all of us do, we have these ideas of what our life is supposed to be. And having a child with brittle bones and autism was not on his bingo card. And so he's just struggling through all of this stuff, but he realizes through all of that struggle that God has also given him a gift in his son, because his son sees the beauty in everything all the time and everyone all the time. It makes me cry even just thinking about it. And that is God. And that is God. Because God is trying to remind us of that all the time. I am here. God says, always, I am here. Yeah. I am in this child. I am in that child, whether they have autism or not. I am in Scott and Teresa as they struggle through their own self-loathing and self-medication. And so the movie, I'm like, not that I'm not proud of all the things that I've been a part of, but the movie is just a beautiful film with a beautiful story and a true story. And I think that it's something that people will like, that everyone it will resonate with everyone on one level or another, but I'm particularly excited for all of the families who have been navigating the waters of having a child on the spectrum, and for those children to see themselves represented on screen, and those families seeing themselves represented on screen. It's really beautiful.
So many of your movies have the theme of mental resilience. Do the movies choose you, or do you choose your movies?
These roles find me. And I think that there's something really fun about that. Like when I can open myself up and recognize that in every one of these roles, God is also trying to teach me something, and I get to learn through that, and I get to grow through that. And I don't, none of that's lost on me. Like, I think that, again, having the opportunity to play this role is the opportunity to honor the people who have been in this situation, and not just with having a child with autism, but like, there's a lot of what I brought into playing the role of Scott and self-medication, which I've done way too much of in my life, dealing with my own mental health issues and emotional health issues. So it personally resonated with me. And I know, not just because of the amount of people that have responded on social media to my book, telling me that they have gone through something so similar and they have struggled loving themselves and struggled with self-medication or whatever. This is a very real thing. This is something that almost everybody deals with on some level. Do you love yourself? Do you really love yourself? I didn't know that I didn't. I didn't even know what self-love was until I was 37 years old.
Well, it feels like such a weird term. It's like, oh, I love myself, right? It sounds mushy to some people, probably especially
narcissistic.
men. It
Yeah.
sounds very narcissistic.
Mhm.
And so what got you, I'm glad you brought up the book because I was curious what got you to write this book. I would imagine it'd be incredibly difficult given that you had to air you aired conflicts that you had in the past with your mom, your dad. I mean, you just put it all out there. And so what made you decide to write the book? And how has it impacted you putting this book out there?
Well, the book came about because at 37 years old, I just moved to Austin with this head full of steam and dreams of building this arc.
Okay, so you were already in Austin.
I had just moved to Austin. I sold my house in LA in May, drove out with my U-Haul behind my truck to Austin, Texas, picked up my Airstream, and was living on a whole other piece of property that I thought I was going to buy by June of 2017. And then my whole life started to fall apart. Now, my life was falling apart prior to that, but I didn't realize it because we're, quite good at self-medicating, but also just like, staying positive and all right, no, we're good. I don't think we're very good at being able to hide a lot of our own symptoms, right? And fighting through
sometimes we
stuff.
don't even know we're hiding it, right?
Exactly.
I mean, did you know you were hiding
No.
any symptoms? You probably were like, no, I'm fine, like any other person.
This is
right?
what I'm saying. That's how good we are at being able to kind of keep pushing through. But I was very, very, very unhappy. And I didn't realize how unhappy I was. And I got out to Austin and I had a complete mental breakdown, surrounded by darkness, didn't want to live anymore, didn't know why. I was able to, thank God, surrounded by my friends and family. My younger sister found a place in Connecticut that was deep, intensive therapy. And I went for 3 weeks, saved my life. As a part of that, I learned for the first time that I didn't know what self-love was and that I did not love myself. While I was staying in this house and doing all of this therapy, I had told my agency, hey, I'm going to be off grid. I have to go do some deep, real serious healing. About a week and a half into that, I got an email from my agency in typical Hollywood fashion. But it was also completely God because this was meant to be. And a little not preface to the story because I'm already into the story, but 2 months prior to this, I had been offered an audition for the role of Shazam in the movie Shazam, but I turned it down because I knew that The Rock was already cast as Black Adam. I knew that the characters of Black Adam and Shazam are basically like doppelgangers. They're like twin brothers. I mean, they look like they're twins, but have slightly different haircuts. And I'm like, well, I am not The Rock's twin. They're probably looking for John Cena or something, right? So thanks, but no thanks. And I passed on it. Now, 2 months later, I'm at this place trying to save my own life. And I get an email and they go, hey, don't mean to bother you. There's a supporting role in Shazam, small little thing. You want to put yourself on tape? You don't want to do it? No problem. That's fine. But that day I had just had a breakthrough and I just started to see the light again. And I said, when do they need this by? They said by Friday. And so Friday came around and I felt good enough to put myself on tape. I did one take and I sent it in. Well, that night they called back and they said, not only do we love what he did here for this role, but we haven't cast Shazam yet. We think he could be Shazam. And I'm like, what is happening right now? So then 1 week later, through finishing up my therapy there, flying to Hollywood and doing a screen test, I was Shazam. And all of that happened because I went and I started to heal myself, without a doubt. I would not have been able to even handle any of what came with this had I not gone and done that most important thing first, loving myself. So when I was promoting the film, I told my publicists, I cannot talk about this film. I cannot promote this film without being honest about how I got this job and how I got this role and talking about my mental health journey. And they were like, okay. So then I did a few interviews and podcasts, Jay Shetty and some others, and I was able to talk about this whole story. And HarperCollins saw some of that and were like, this is a book. You should write a book. So they contacted my team. They brought me in their offices in New York. We sat down. I was like, listen, I barely read books, let alone write them. And they're like, don't worry. We've got people that will help you with that. And that's how the book came to be. And to me, it was just a part of the journey of what God wanted me to do with all of that story, which is to let people know that you are not alone. You are not alone. We're all struggling. Every single person is struggling with something. Mental health is like dental health. Like we all have to brush and floss our teeth every single day. Otherwise we get little cavities. And if we don't take care of those, they grow and they grow and they grow. And then we need a full-blown root canal. If we don't take care of our mental health on a daily basis, if we're not spending time in prayer and meditation and thought practices, or by the way, also physically, are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? Are you moving your body? Are you doing the things that you need to do in order to keep all of this going? Your brain is absolutely intrinsically connected to all of these things. So yeah, part of my life's mission is to go and just preach the good word of what it means to love ourselves and to take care of ourselves and protect our mental and emotional and spiritual well-being along with our physical well-being. And so that's what the book was. And listen, there was definitely a moment before we came out with the book where I had a massive anxiety attack because I get very vulnerable in the book and I do talk about a lot of things. And the last thing I wanted was for anyone that I'm talking about in that book who may have been a part of the traumas that I've experienced in the past to ever be traumatized in me talking about that. Because as I talk about in the book, I know that my mom, my dad, my stepdad, like everyone who's been involved, even the people in Hollywood that, were a part of the trauma that I've received over the years, everyone is doing the best they can with the tools they have and the knowledge they have at the time. That's the reality. Even the worst people that we can think of, even people that go into markets and blow people up with bombs strapped to their chests. Does this mean what they did is right? No. What they did is absolutely horrible. That is an evil act. But in their mind, they think they're the good guy. They might be thinking, I am honoring Allah. I'm honoring Allah by going and doing this righteous thing. It's not a righteous thing. It's a horrible thing. It's an evil thing. But with the tools that they've been given since, by the way, they were 4 years old, being conditioned to believe that this is some righteous act, we're not going to be able to get to the promised land as a world if we're constantly looking at people as, ew, oh, you're horrible. We've got to be able to look at people who do bad things, hold them accountable for what they do, but also recognize that they are operating with a broken mindset. Like I'm a firm believer in this.
But it's a whole nother level when you talk publicly about family, right? I would imagine that before you actually published the book, you had a moment where you said to yourself, they're going to read this.
Yeah.
And they're going to react a certain way. And is it okay? Are they going to feel like I'm retaliating or shaming them or, right? I mean, how do you bring that to them without throwing a nuclear bomb in your life?
So the majority of the trauma that I experienced in my life was through my mom. And she's the one that I talk about the most in the book, probably. But she had passed at that point. My dad was still alive at the time, though I definitely talk about our relationship and where I think a lot of the needs as a son were not met by my father. I don't think it was particularly harsh. I think, when I talk about my stepdad in the book, there was definitely some trauma that I experienced at the hands of my stepfather. But again, I also make it very clear, like he was doing the best he could with the tools that he had at the time. And there are some other people as well that I reference a little bit. But I think that, the biggest thing for me was my dad, because he was still alive. And, the reality is my dad never once brought the book up. I don't know if my dad ever read the book, which I don't know. It's kind of, I guess, par for the course. But also maybe he didn't need to. I don't know. My dad, he, like I told you earlier, I mean, he was not an unintelligent man, but he was a simple man. And he had a lot of faith. And I know that he loved me. And I know that I loved him. And sometimes that's all you need to know.
There's this thing I say about forgiveness, which has to do with the fact that when you want to forgive, it has nothing to do with the other side that you're forgiving. It has to do with what you decide to do yourself, because you
That's
can't change you
exactly
cannot
right.
change the other person, right? Did your mom know that you forgive her?
There's many, idioms or adages that speak to this, but my favorites of all of them is unforgiveness is like drinking poison, hoping that the other person will die. The forgiveness is not for them. The forgiveness is for you to let go. And it doesn't even mean to forget. Like, let's forgive and forget. No, you don't need to forget, but you need to let go of the toxicity that's attached to the memory. And people are like, well, how do you do that? And you go, well, by recognizing that it wasn't personal. They go, what do you mean it wasn't personal? They said this thing or they did this thing. It's like, yeah. But that's coming out of their programming. That's coming out of what happened to them that brought them to that place in their life. When I went to therapy, I had this assignment to write a letter to my parents. And I went to put the pen to paper, and girl, I could not stop crying. I could not stop. I was like ugly crying, weeping crying. And I think therapists know this. Like, this stuff gets stored in us, this trauma. Like the body keeps the score. Like it gets stored inside of us. If we're never really doing something to exercise exercise the demons. If you're not really doing stuff to get that out of you, it's in you. It's stuck in you. And it's stuck in pain and anger and frustration and all these things. And I was weeping and weeping and weeping. Like, I don't even know where to begin. I had so many feelings. And I start writing. And the whole page is full of, I can't believe you did. How dare you treat me and your daughters the way that you treated us? You were supposed to be our mom. You were supposed to be our protector. You were supposed to be all of these things. Just like getting it all out. And I flipped the paper over and I put the pen back on the paper with every intention of continuing down that line of thought. And it was like God in that moment switched off the anger and switched on the empathy. And I just started to write like it was God writing. It was like, you did that because you first were abused, because your mother abused you so horribly when you were a child. Even at 5 years old, she left you on the side of the road. Like all of these things just start pouring out of me. And I could feel my heart breaking for my mom, just breaking for this woman who had broken my heart, who had traumatized me. Like, I can't even, like, as you get through the book, you'll see some of the examples of it, but that's forgiveness. It's not saying it didn't happen. God forbid we ever somehow turn our eyes and, no, I wasn't abused. No, I wasn't. No, nobody's saying don't acknowledge what has happened. But in order to work through it, you've got to recognize that you're abusers. And this is why I went to the example of the far extreme of the spectrum of like somebody would go and kill other people. That's the far extreme. What are we all dealing with on a regular basis? Our normal, everyday traumas coming from, first and foremost, our parents, our family, our community, our society, our faith, sometimes the religions that we're a part of. We were talking about, my mom was a Reformed Catholic because the Catholic church that she grew up in was abusive to her. And it was to a lot of people. And yet there are also people that are some of the most tender, kind-hearted people of faith that are Catholic that I've ever met in my life. So it's not specific to the religion, but every religion's definitely got people that have been abused within that religion and within that system. And that doesn't mean that we have to hold on to hating them or a representation of them for the rest of our life. You also don't ever have to step foot in any of those churches again. But if you're sitting around like, that's not doing anything to them. That's only hurting you. So take the poison, put it down, stop sipping on that, let go of the anger of this toxicity that exists in that traumatic exchange. Do the work you need to do to heal from it. But I firmly believe that part of that healing, if you really want to move past it, and that's the thing. A lot of people say they want to move past it, but they don't really want to move past it. Because if they do, they no longer have this thing they can fall back on in their victim mentality.
Or it's the identity of themselves that they know.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's hard to move away from that.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
Right?
That is their identity.
Yeah.
The victim.
Yeah.
And that's a really difficult thing to let go of. I mean, look at where we're at as a society right now.
Sure.
This is one of the biggest problems we have. We have encouraged everyone in every people group. It's the victim Olympics.
Yes, the oppression Olympics.
The oppression Olympics. Who can get to the bottom the fastest?
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, hey, yeah, listen, those things are horrible that happened to you. They're horrible. They never should have happened. And let's work together to make sure they never happen again. But if you keep holding on to it, not only are you never going to get out of this, you're going to start creating problems with everybody else.
Right. And you will never see peace.
Ever.
You're about to become a dad.
Yeah.
So we should talk about that fun thing.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you always wanted to be a dad.
Always.
It's happening soon.
Yeah.
So
yeah. We're about 2 months out. First week of April.
What are your feelings?
Man, I mean, just excitement, happiness. I have no doubt it'll be very emotional. I'm an emotional person, as you can probably tell.
You ready to break the chain?
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. It's one of the things I'm most excited about. It's become very clear to me because God is so good. God was like, Zach, like, I wanted you to get healed. I wanted you to get healed enough before you brought another life into the world so that you can effectively stop the generational trauma that has been cursing our family for millennia. I mean, I think it goes all the way back, all the way back. Sins of the father. That's generational trauma as far as I'm concerned. And we know that, by the way, it actually affects our DNA. It literally affects our DNA. If you have an alcoholic in your past, there are certain chromosomal changes and things that will happen that will then give you more of a propensity to go and fall into the same types of, bad behaviors or whatever. So there's been a lot of trauma and pain in my lineage. My mom and my dad and my stepdad, like if they would have actually had the opportunity to heal, to love themselves, to learn how to love themselves before they became parents, I wish they had that opportunity. I do. And I'm just so glad that I have gotten to experience everything I've experienced and learned everything I've learned, to grow in every way that I've grown, so that when I get to bring our child into the world, I can love them from just a more healed and complete place that my parents were not afforded. And in large part because when they were growing up, these weren't even conversations that people were having.
Yeah.
Like the idea of going to a therapist is like, oh, are they crazy? Like movies from the 70s and 80s and stuff. If anybody ever talked about like, they're going to a shrink. Oh, loony bins next, And so I'm so grateful that we are, as a society, even though in some ways we're regressing, in other ways we are progressing in good ways, and understanding our mental and emotional well-being is a huge part of that. And I'm so grateful that I have done a lot of that work before bringing our child into the world. And I keep saying our child because we don't know if it's a boy or a girl, which is super exciting. We're going to wait till the very end. Old school. Doing it old school.
I don't know how people do it, but.
Wait till the end, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, Maggie, my girlfriend.
So many people do it, by the way. I'm not against it. I'm just like, I'm such a curious cat.
Well, so am I.
I don't think I could handle it.
No, so am I, honestly. But Maggie, my girlfriend, when we were talking about it early on, when we found out we were pregnant, I was like, well, what do you want? What do you want to do? Do you want to find out or do you not? And she said, if I'm going to carry this baby for 9 months and then push this baby out. I want as much like push motivation as possible at the end.
Okay. That I can relate to.
Yeah.
Push motivation one needs.
Yeah. And so she was like, if I can have
Women
one
need.
extra little thing, which is the surprise of finding out the sex at the
All
end,
right.
that's an extra bit. And I was like, you know what? That's awesome. I'm down. Whatever. And it's something like, as a guy we'd never think about because we're just kind of along for the ride.
Yeah.
You know, I'm there trying to just keep her as comfortable as possible and making sure she's got everything that she needs. And, you know, but you guys do the heavy lifting on that stuff.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be an awesome dad. So no
Thanks.
matter what, boy or girl, it's going to be amazing. And
Thank you.
You know,
I can't wait.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for being so open.
Happy to. I love talking about this stuff.